Hello, everybody! Welcome back to another episode of the Unturned podcast. I'm your host, Cody Charles. We're joined by a very special guest today, Jay Dance.
Hey, y'all.
I didn't think I would be making an episode so soon. I didn't think we would be here making an emergency episode so soon, but hey, it's an emergency ep. I'm here with Jay Dance because I believe he's one of the most knowledgeable people on specifically the topic we're going to be talking about today, and the subject of the thumbnail, and mainly just what everybody's talking about right now. Because we now have an official date when the source code is going to release for Unturned. And it's a pretty big thing.
I mean, I hope I'm knowledgeable on it.
I think you're like one of the most knowledgeable people that I could probably ask you. Like, the questions that matter the most.
So why don't you mention the release date?
July 7th?
July 7th. This better be out before then.
No, I could get it out, like, on July 1st. I can get the app out quick. It's not a problem.
You're gonna rush it. Where are we? When are you getting on Apple? Was it Apple Podcasts or whatever? Spotify.
Apple Podcast, but we're not going on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Right?
That would help me so much. I don't have Premium, so I have to leave the phone screen on while I have it in my pocket.
That's terrible. That's terrible.
You're making me give money to Google.
There's funny. It's a funny story. You actually mentioned that. I remember there's somebody that used to like listen to the podcast in their car, and they put the phone on their like their dashboard, and make sure that it was like still on. It was dangerous, but that's what they told me. So I think that's pretty funny that you mentioned that.
So when's our release date, Charles? July 6th. Did you already say that? Oh no.
For what
Wait, July 7th. July 7th, right? The anniversary of the game. Birthday.
Yeah, the anniversary. Yeah.
The big
day.
The
12th anniversary.
Is it the 12th? Has it been that long?
Yeah, it would be 12 years because it came out in 2014.
Yeah, but it came out early access in 2017. So how many years does that make it since it officially released in terms of
We're not considering the early access thing. That's so silly, bro. Early access is just in my opinion, the early access, like, 2017 was actually when the game released. No, it wasn't. All right? The game was out in 2014.
Well, talking about the release date, because I had this weird thing. I believe if you go to the game on Discord, let me look. Do you still have the game open? So on Discord, if you go to Unturned's page, like, because Discord has pages for games, if you go to Unturned, it says the release date is July 6th. Of 2017, which is just incorrect in terms of when it came out of early access, because the official release date for like platforms like that is going to be when it comes out of early access. So it came out of early access on July 7th. So Discord says early access says the game released on July 6th, and Wikipedia, which I recently had to change, said it came out on July 8th. I'm not sure how people are getting the release date listed on Steam wrong, but it's just a funny thing I was like looking at was the fact that like people kept getting the release date off by like a day.
No, this is pretty odd. You'd think something would be so concretely solid, but I guess not. I don't know. That sounds weird.
I don't know if I should be blaming on AI. I mean, because like, how half-brained are you in the sense that like you just open the Steam page and it says the release date, like it's not overcomplicated in any way, but. Nonetheless, so what's the first thing you want to ask? Because I have a lot of info on like what's coming out, because I had my hands on the SDK a little bit earlier, just to mess around with it, figure out bugs and stuff. So what do you got for me?
Personally, I wanted to start with a couple things that I've kind of like I said in the last episode that kind of got more clarity because it was kind of described in the support articles for the release of the source code to kind of like explain a little bit as like what's actually going to happen.
So to fact check you there though, so it's not actually a support article. The new was it the FAQ or whatever? That's actually that's on the Unturned documentation. Just to clarify.
Okay. I forgot where it was. I just remember reading it. But specifically, the threat of specifically cheating is almost like not really a big deal, because apparently most decompilers will just get the majority of Unturned and have been for years. So I guess that was like some solace in knowing that's not really going to be that much of a difference. The monetization of these kind of like other games based on the game is completely off the table, which I don't, which makes sense, but there is a lot of workarounds that I've seen already, for more like for games in general, and I wonder how Smiley Just Games is going to deal with a game that's not inherently making you like pay for it, but pay for either a service, a secondary service to access like as like a side grade, or like even like maybe even merchandising stuff. I wonder what they will do for that. I don't know if they've had a plan for that yet. I don't think it has crossed their mind. I don't think they will really care, because I remember I asked about making a Unturned related merchandise for the podcast, and they didn't really mind too much about it. To be fair, I wasn't like pretending to be Unturned, obviously, but obviously there's something probably going to happen and be in place for that. Another thing that was mentioned in the FAQ, I think, was Smiley Dress Games still owning the original, Steam version of Unturned, and still planning to maintain it. Keyword maintain. We had the thought for a little bit, due to Callie's release in the thumbnail before it was changed, that potentially Unturned was going to be sunsetted, and would be kind of like not maintained. That was like a belief from a couple of people in the scene. I kind of was on the fence of like whether or not that would be the case, mainly because Nelson has made it clear that, Nelson has said several times beforehand, that I think his ideal world for the game in the future is specifically to let the community basically make updates for it, and then him to implement those updates if they're good enough, and making sure the game doesn't collapse, obviously, due to either Unity or maybe like Steam doing something, right? And that's kind of like always been what he's always said. So I've always thought that it was kind of like it could happen, but it's not necessarily something that would that was like on my mind fully, because Nelson has made that clear. That's going to be the state of how things were. I remember years ago, this is like a old head thing. If people have been around for so long, you remember the townhouse meeting in UO, where Nelson was there taking like basically an FAQ with the Discord staff at the time, and Molt himself. And I remember Nelson saying that I think this is like 2022. I don't remember the year, but I remember Nelson saying that he sees himself working on the game for 5 years. Like he sees himself playing, like working on the game for 5 years from that point. And we're kind of, I think we've already approached that. If it was 2021, we've already approached that. If it was 2022, we're already almost approaching that. So it's like a nice little, like, it seems like this was planned for a very long time. I mean, I remember Nelson talking about being open source back on Spamal's podcast all those years ago. So I think this has been a very long plan, as to what exactly was going to happen. And we've kind of known, exactly what Nelson was thinking when it comes to stuff. We just need to see in the final, on July 7th, what exactly he has planned for the game and what we have to see. Something that wasn't, addressed in the FAQ that I was slightly concerned about was, well, I understand the merchandising thing. I understand everything else. Everything else makes sense. The last thing I'm just concerned about is, what if somebody just like, I don't know, a project is now just going to have malware in it, Like if someone just makes something like that. And I think you know a little bit about this, Jaden, so I want to ask you.
So so I want to go back to earlier to what you were talking about that, about like monetization and stuff, because it's going to lead into what you're talking about malware and stuff. So one of the big things with the whole commercialization stuff, like not being able to do that, was the fact of the matter is, what if somebody makes like a highly adopted like Unturned module, like Unturned branch called like Unturned Plus, for instance, right? And a bunch of dedicated servers are on it. Are those servers not allowed to monetize like as regular servers on there because they're on a branch that's not allowed to be commercialized? It's like, what entities are bound by that non-commercial agreement thing? And like the other thing is, are people who are down installing and using that branch of the game, are they having to agree to that same license, or is it just the people working with the SDK itself and making the branch? I think that was one of the main things. I don't know if you want to comment on that, but it seems like a very gray area because servers are going to want to monetize.
I wonder who would out of the large like networks of server providers would be willing to provide their services to these different forks of Unturned, because again they have to build the structure to even do it in the first place, and that's gonna be a big hindrance for anybody that's gonna own any of these forks. And I also wonder if they think it might be legally risky to also be involved, because I think inherently I don't think we've ever really seen something like this before for such a large, game. And I think it's going to be very like, a big thing for the entirety of the gaming world to kind of see as to can something like this work or not. And I'm not sure if these, the server providers like currently right now would be willing to jump on ship with that. So, but when it comes to the commercializing thing as well, yeah. Who actually is going to be enforced? Is it the people who just accepted the EULA and the terms of the files to actually make the fork? Is there going to be outside sources going to be able to make money like they have been in the base Unturned game? It's really like it's a really like messy world when it comes to that, because somebody's going to be wanting to make profit somewhere, and they've always tried to make profit off this game. It's not going to go away when they go and make these different forks of Unturned. It's going to just come up in different ways that are potentially not going to be violating the agreements that they all made.
So, talking about forks in general, it's actually, we've confirmed, and we confirmed this maybe a few months ago, that there actually does exist a current fork of the game that's published outside of Steam that has its own launcher and everything. And I think I told you about this before in private about this. It's a game made, well, it's a branch of the game made in the Russian Federation called Rust X. And what they've essentially, it's basically a Rust turned branch of the game, because they wanted to change the UI completely. Interestingly enough, a lot of mechanics and functionality of that branch have not changed really. It was primarily UI changes, not much else, which really kind of made me confused as to why would you make a branch of the game and then change like so little in terms of everything about it. However, Rust X has monetization to it. They have a store and stuff. So this is a branch of fork in the game that is going to predate the U-Free SDK that we're about to have. So first, it's not even under the new license, and two, it's going to be violating the new license because they primarily run official servers on there, and they're making money off of a branch of the game. Whether SDG can enforce something against something that's made in the Russian Federation is a totally different story.
Yeah, and that's also a concern as to like, while I think you could block a lot of these like server networks from the people who play court with Canadian law, like you're not going to be able to get rid of everybody, because again, not everybody's laws are going to be the same, and they're not going to abide by the same laws, obviously. And people will always like find a way to access these different medias, different ways of playing the game, even if it is quote unquote illegal. I think about specifically like Super Smash Bros. Melee, right, and how they've tried so hard to circulate ISO files for people to basically dump onto their computer and play Melee, right? And there's so many hoops and so many things that people do for just that, for Nintendo not to like crack down on them. And Nintendo can't. It's so painful and annoying to deal with that they just physically cannot do so. And I know like it was very simple for people just to explain how it worked to even me. And I know I've seen that side of things, and I know like potentially we're going to be seeing that in Unturned as well. And again, it's just another question of enforcement, as to how far enforcement will go. Will SDG be going after the kind of like the small potatoes, kind of like change things like what you mentioned, or is it going to just go after the larger kind of like projects that are violating the agreement? And I don't know, somebody could challenge it realistically, even though they probably would lose. That's still a possibility, depending on how much money they're going to make, because obviously, like, there is money in this game. I've talked to server owners over the years, and I think Gina, how much money is in this game, and you can imagine how much more money that people can make off this game if they can control more of it. So, I don't know. And I'm not saying that Spiders Games doesn't have the capital to really, like, drag a case out in court. I'm just saying it's going to be messy, depending on how they enforce this.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I don't want to promote exactly like cheat developers in any way. Definitely not. But recently with RustX, Gazzy FX, a former cheat developer, recently posted on a forum. Well, not recently, maybe back in March, I think. It's not like that recent, but somewhat recent. That there is malicious code in RustX, stuff that's like looking for like passwords, etc., cookies, stuff like that. So the malware issue is very real. I'd like to hope that it would be more enforced if you were to install this branch from, let's say, community mod on Steam, if they go through with the whole community mod on Steam stuff. But no, the malware thing is a very real possibility. It's one of many reasons in which many people were negatively like against, like they were against the whole open sourcing concept for this reason.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm very much afraid of the potential vulnerability of people who are less tech savvy. I mean, obviously, we both know the demographic of the player base of Unturned, and I honestly don't think people realize that there is a lot of people who are could be very vulnerable to this, and it could cause massive problems for tons of people. And again, think about the publicity of that. Think about seeing something on like a major news network about how this kind of all was very bad, right? And think about the precedent that could set for the future of something like this for a different game, and people thinking about that stuff as well. It's dangerous, and it needs to be done correctly, because there's a lot of people who are vulnerable to potentially a lot of attacks from a lot of malicious people. And in my opinion, what I'm concerned about as well is I understand that the monetization, is non-existent for the majority of these changes to Unturned. They're still going to be using the source code of Unturned, obviously, right? But people have their reasons behind doing things, right? And usually, when it's not monetary, I'm just thinking about this more in the malicious way. There's other ways to, kind of think in your head as to getting what you owe. You know what I mean? And a lot of that can be malicious. And I think what's happening on already the Rust X kind of situation is a bad omen as to what we potentially could see in the future when it comes to like all these different games are going to branch off of Unturned itself. And again, I hope that there is oversight. I hope that we can probably get to Steam so they can, because they have to do their verification, correct?
So Steam sometimes catches stuff, but if somebody, let's say, reports something to Steam would be like getting to it right away in that sort of scenario, I believe.
Yeah, which would at least cut down a lot of potential kind of problems that this could lead to. But yeah, it's a huge concern, and I don't know. I sometimes am afraid of the idea of just some guy who doesn't know about Unturned very well, or just computers in general, being told by a different guy hey, check this out, right? And basically it's it's Unturned itself, because they're familiar with Unturned, and they go to it, and then they just end up being being screwed over because they didn't know any better, and there wasn't really any guardrails to protect somebody like that. It is a concern, and I'm not sure what we're going to do. I'm not sure what people are going to trust or believe,
I wanted to get into what's like actually in the SDK. Because I don't think people are quite aware exactly what this is, right? The SDK is somewhat of it's a branch or version of the game that's stripped of a lot of stuff. Like it's stripped of like the assets themselves. It's stripped of certain dependencies that you don't have a license for, etc. It's stripped of like some Unity asset store stuff. So it's not the full game itself. So you're only going to have so much to work with to begin with, and you're going to have to purchase your own licensing for certain stuff if you're going to have to publish. So that might be a good barrier. This thing is like stuff like RustX. I'm sure that they are using game dependencies that they're not supposed to be using, that they haven't got a license for. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people that are going to do that with the branching. Obviously, SCG isn't going to leave these dependencies in the SDK because that would be illegal for them. They can't just be distributing these libraries. However, they're not going to be able to enforce if people like use these dependencies in their own branches and stuff and add them back. And that's not their place to do even. So we'll just have to see if third parties are going to start enforcing stuff about people transferring some dependencies over to their branch of the game.
That would be interesting to see, but given the kind of extent of like, I guess like people enforcing their rights, like their copyright and their kind of work on Unturned, surprisingly, the large corporations have not cracked down on Unturned, which is kind of surprising, given the amount of, I think, copyright abuse that is on the workshop in Relay of Unturned. I think they just don't care enough. They might not care enough for that, but it is also a possibility that people will care about, and yeah, people should be worried about that as well. I don't know. It's a very interesting kind of future.
Some of the example dependencies that will be gone for anything more technical, anyone more technical, is the anti-cheat, obviously, BattleEye, not going to be there. A-Star Pathfinding Project Library, not going to be there. The highlighting system plugin is not going to be there, so those highlights you see around vehicles and stuff that you're trying to select won't be there. You're going to have to get the license yourself. Water shaders and the planar reflections that we use are from the Unity 4 Pro standard assets. You're going to have to buy it on your own. And stuff like Namesh cut components won't be usable unless the pathfinding library is added back. But again, you're going to have to pay for a license for that.
Yeah, it's a lot, and I wonder how these guys are going to deal with that. I mean, there's a lot of Unturned you can do without any of that, to be fair. But that is a lot to take away. Is the sound library allowed for people to develop or no? Like to use with development or no?
What do you mean sound library? Because from what I'm aware, the sound, whatever sound library it is, that's just built-in Unity sound.
Okay.
So that's
I wasn't
built
sure.
into the Unity licensing that you have. So again, also with these branches, just so people are aware, if you get over a certain amount of downloads and you're publishing on Steam, you're gonna have to pay for Unity licensing as well. So there's gonna be a lot of barriers in terms of money in this. You're gonna have to be paying for all these dependencies and licenses to use stuff or to publish a branch of the game.
Do you know the pricing?
No, I don't know the pricing, but I know Unity was very greedy. We had that incident with them trying to implement a runtime fee.
Oh yeah.
So I'd argue that it's going to be expensive if a bunch of people want to do it. Like per person, like per project, it's going to add up to some money. And in some ways, I'm surprised SCE didn't make this more of like an application-based system, but I suppose that would have just required a lot of enforcement, a lot of review, not something they can put on their plates. But at least maybe then we would have had less concerns about like somebody who might be malicious or somebody who can't be trusted with making a branch.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be hard for people to really make a passion project for Unturned, I guess, given those restrictions. But I don't think it's like, I don't think it's gonna stop people from really doing stuff. People will pay money to make, um, people will pay money to make whatever they want to make. I mean, I've seen it multiple times when it comes to just like, you know, workshop mods. Like people paid lots of money for certain things, so I believe people will probably pay to get back a semblance of like Unturned, no matter the price. I wonder who will be the first kind of pioneers when it comes to making an alternative Unturned. Right? We obviously know that SCG has made it clear that you cannot like claim to be Unturned because it's, you know, their copyright, right? And they're
Trademark.
their IP and their
Trademark, yeah.
And, you know, people are going to just go ahead and, you know, make a completely different name, different thing. But I wonder how different it will be, and the first people to do it, and how different they will see it be.
Well, again, the first people who do it, which is why it makes it so worrisome, because the first person who does it is the sets precedent, you know, and that was RestX. Okay, it's RestX. RestX completely renamed, etc. Apart from it not using the license and doing it early and stuff and violating the license, it is a good representation of what that could conceptually be, because again, it's a completely changed name. There's not even many references to SGG or Unturned on like RustX website, etc. And there's malware in it. So again, you already have that. You already have an instance of that, in my opinion. I think it would be interesting if more people looked into RustX and see how see what it means for everyone in general, because not a lot of people have been exposed to it, mainly Russian-speaking individuals, but we'll see.
Yeah. Obviously, that's like the first technical one, but like under the actual Vaccinator, July 7th. Like technically, I want to see what is the actual first real thing to come out, and if we get something similar to Rust X, and I think the future is gonna be very bleak on like stuff like that. And I don't know. It's a very scary moment in Unturned's history, and either this will be like considered another blunder, or or something really like, you know, magical will happen with the game. I think about like something funny. I know, given me saying this, like you think about Among Us and how like moddable that became, and you saw like I think people know like the kind of creator like SS Sunday, like how much he like kind of milked it, but also showed off how much you could change about a game and kind of like spin on it, right? Okay, J-Dance.
Yeah.
But like again, that was a good like it's not inherently the same thing, obviously, right? Because you're still modding a game, but I feel like he was always able to spin something, add something new, do something to the game, and I wonder if we'll get something like that, you know, kind of in the future. Unturned, I think, when it comes to just like, in my opinion, its appeal and why it succeeded for so long, and that no other survival game has this besides, I guess, MC, but MC has to go. You have to go through multiple channels, whereas Unturned is more streamlined when it comes to its workshop content. Is really again just people being able to make stuff in Unturned and being able to, you know, let's talk for the larger player base. You know.
Well, let's talk about MC for a moment. MC, when it comes to the mods, I assume we're talking about Minecraft when we're talking about MC.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Is you have these .jar files, and they have to be added to both the server and the client. You know what that basically is? Adding something to both the server and client? What's the Unturned equivalent of that? Modules. We've had this functionality for a long time of extending the game code. Server owners and plugin developers have refused to do it as of late because they call the game dead, etc., and they're not willing to make it. So there's this huge debate, especially among plugin developers, whether we should just be sticking to modules or whether we should be making a whole new branch of the game. Modules are technically better in the sense that we're going to be continuing to work off the main branch of the game. We're not going to have to publish a new thing. We're not going to have to pay for licensing and stuff because it's just one plugin library. You're not distributing anything else except your own code because the library is already in the game. And that's how you do it. So my thing is open making an open source branch, like making a branch of the game, isn't going to make sense for many. It would make more sense if somebody made a launcher, like the Technic launcher, for instance, to just launch modules that are both server side and client side, rather than republish a whole branch of the game. So I've been pushing this for a long time, is the fact that people fail to embrace modules, and if people have failed to embrace modules, they're going to fail to embrace making an R branch of the game anyways, for a lot of people. Only the few are going to be capable of making a branch of the game, as I put in my blog post on Restore Monarchy about the open sourcing, is only the few. You're going to need people with sufficient experience and enough time to do it. And if people already don't want to do like low effort modules, they're not going to want to do a full branch of the game and do publication for that, because you're going to have to pay your $100 Steamworks fee, pay for all your licensing. It's too many barriers.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there is a lot of barriers to that. And I think, again, people are going to be wanting to recoup what they already put into the game. And there's not many people who, in my opinion, are still left around that have goodwill towards Unturned and Smiley Just Games for multiple reasons. And I think people will be more malicious than good, sadly. And like you said, like there was already systems in place to make, decent modules, and nobody did. And it's kind of like we're just going to see that repeating of like nobody was gonna make like a whole fork of the game and it'd be up to par or better than Unturned itself. And also the issue is just like how much of that will Smartly Dressed Games just be like, oh, that's good. Can we ask them to just implement that into the game? And then what? Which is still like a question as to exactly like what exactly is gonna happen for these people who do want to make some money off their projects and off their work. Because in my opinion, you're not gonna expect people to not want to make some sort of monetary value from the effort they put into doing something. It's just ridiculous to think otherwise.
Well, for something, so one of the other things was how it would like split up an already small player base if you have multiple branches of the game. And again, going back to RustX shows that. We looked, and apparently there was like a peak of 600 on RustX, which is a pretty sizable amount of players when you look at the multiplayer stats for the game. Because right now we have, right now Restore Monarchy is reporting about 1,899 players online. It's fairly accurate, Restore Monarchy. So imagine like 600 of those players could be of that, like could be on RustX. In terms of the Steam player charts, for instance, because RustX, I'm sure, is using Steam's APIs and stuff, and they need to use a app ID to like piggyback and use those. So they're most likely using Unturned's app ID. So the 600 players on RustX are actually 600 players being reported on like Steam charts and SteamDB right now. So it's going to be weird, like looking at player counts and stuff at the beginning. And I think RustX is a pretty good proof about like the player base possibly being split up, because that's 600 players that could have been on the actual branch of the game playing on just a regular Rustern server.
Yeah, and I wonder, currently now, like the server chain, like browser setting, a lot of them are just workshop and very heavily modded servers, and I wonder if they'll just go to somewhere that's more modular, technically, and then also inflate the numbers. It's also a possibility. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But yeah, you're right. Like, we're gonna get even more confusion when it comes to how many people are actually playing the game. And like specifically, is Unturned like teetering off, or are we seeing like just like Unturned like succeeding currently? It's gonna be more ambiguous, more questionable. Nobody's gonna be able to pinpoint anymore because of this, unless it's done differently. So besides like kind of that whole ordeal, we gotta think about the good side of this stuff. Um, I think there will be people who will try to make like good forks of the game. I don't know what that would look like or who would be involved, but there definitely is people right now that are willing to make Unturned as good as they can. And I bet you it could be like just a small group of people pitching in money, or like a guy putting a bunch of money into just, first of all, getting the licenses and getting everything ready to go, and onboarding a bunch of guys who would love to change the game. And then, bringing them on to make like a pseudo team to kind of make content for their fork of the game. And then, that could be something that could happen. I definitely could see that happening, given some of the passion of people in this community. Again, I wonder the extent of the monetization rule for people like that, who are just like wholeheartedly trying to make things work. And obviously, when you're doing stuff for, no monetary, you're just doing for passion, you're gonna eventually have to. There's a limit to that, and I've seen it time and time again with workshop mods and stuff like that. People just losing the passion to do that work because either life takes over or some other thing comes into their life that they have to do, or they find a new passion, right? And losing talent and losing those people is kind of sad. It's kind of sad to see that those people who had that passion, who had these things, ready to go, kind of just disappear. And we're probably going to see that. We're probably going to see something similar to that. Just whoever is going to be running some sort of project like that needs to do the due diligence and ensure that their people are taken care of, and that everything is up to board with, I guess, one of Risk Games rules. I'm not really sure as what we can really do. We just have to wait and see. This is a very historical moment for Unturned, and in my opinion, the entire gaming space as a whole, and we would be put as an example for the entirety of. You think about like Stop Killing Games, right? And how they were talking about specifically how companies just end up killing their live service games because they don't want to pay for servers, they don't want to pay for maintenance of these games, right? And I 100% believe that Smiley Just Games will be point to as a case study as to for these companies to look at and see what happens. So we better do it right. And we better do it right, and we better make it good for the consumers. Because otherwise, this could be used against the larger gaming community as a point of look what happened. Look how many people were hurt by this because of this. Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't know if community mods have to be approved by SCG, right? Because it's under this license now. We'll have to see. Because I wonder if community mods that will be put on Steam, if they have to abide by SCG's values or not. Because abiding by their values isn't listed on the FAQ or in their license, I don't believe.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that either. I was thinking about specifically the licensing agreement and everything that was in it. But yeah, even that, I don't think LCG is gonna enforce that. That's just not gonna. I don't think that's gonna happen. But yeah, that is something to think about too. There is some people who are very miffed by the direction that Smiley Just Games has gone in, and you could see maybe there could be the anti version of that, and then people just kind of being no, we don't want to deal with Smiley Just Games and their beliefs. We're gonna go ahead and build our own fork and build our own branch away from Smiley Just Games and completely kind of erase them from the picture because of the direction that they've kind of gone in. And that's also something I can see easily.
And so we have it's kind of tie back to console edition, and I'm going to tell you why ties back to console edition is bullet point number 2 in the license agreement: platform restrictions. Licensees shall not permit any any third party to use, develop, adapt, port, compile, translate, or otherwise exploit the software or any mod for and in connection with gaming consoles, mobile handheld devices, or any platform or environment that enables or facilitates gameplay on such devices, including without limitation via emulation, virtualization, streaming, or cloud-based delivery. So you can't do console edition. So let's say something becomes its own thing after like becoming a branch, right? It becomes its own totally different game. They will never be able to port it to any different device other than PC.
I didn't even realize that actually.
Yeah,
Um,
you still have 505 games being foreign in SCG when it comes to the open sourcing.
which is interesting because there was a guy, I'm not sure who he was, but there was a guy that decompiled the entirety of Unturned and ported like the current version to mobile to play on. I think his name was like VKM or something. I forgot his name. I don't know. I don't remember who he was. But that was like 2 years ago. I'm not sure where he is now. I haven't really checked like that port. It could be gone for all I know. But I kind of always like the idea of like people being able to do that. I guess. And I thought this would actually allow for that, but I guess not.
Well, for the most part, so I believe that version, because that was a Unturned 3.0 port. I believe that was taken down. I could be wrong, but I believe 5 Games was going for the effort of taking stuff like that down because they want to protect their console IP. However, I believe there was a 2.0 port that was still up for a long time, and it had like a different name, like it didn't mention Unturned at all, and I believe that was able to stay up because I don't think 5 Games has any license or ownership of anything 2.0 related besides the name.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know the agreement. I wish I could speak to any of them. I remember I tried to speak to I tried to get actually a 505 employee that was connected to the Unturned development to be on the podcast, but the bureaucracy of 505 Games as a company is so terrible to navigate. I had to go through 3 senior managers to try to find anybody, and ended up just like being stonewalled for weeks on end. They're I believe their entire company is probably really badly managed. I tried to speak to the Hellpoint developers, and they were they seemed very upset and very miffed by my questions, and they seemed even confused as to what they were even supposed to do. I tried contacting Fun Lab Studio about that as well, and they seemed completely like wanted to put their hands up and be like, we have no involvement anymore. It seems like whatever was going on in there is just very, I don't know, very weird.
Let's shift from the open sourcing over that for a minute, because I want to first start with a disclaimer of this isn't against SCG. This isn't like a representation of SCG being against them. This isn't a representation of me being like completely against 505 Games or any of their developers. However, for Fun Labs to say that they have no involvement and put their hands up is completely kind of silly, because Fun Labs in themselves managed to mess up the port originally. The version on release had plenty of bugs. Not to mention, they beveled every model in the game and made it look like Play-Doh. Which, as you'd expect, would mean more like vertices, more geometry. So in turn, they managed to like double, heck, maybe even triple the amount of like geometry in the game, which probably didn't help. And there was some weird style changes that made it feel weird. There was weird inventory system changes. There was just weird changes all around that made it feel kind of clunky and silly. And for like Fun Labs to not like comment on that is a little silly, because why did they do any of that? Why did they take these certain design choices and do this? Why did they do that?
It is very confusing, and I honestly wanted to ask them about that too. But it seems like whatever happened behind the scenes between all the parties and the companies was very messy. That's the kind of attitude that I've seen from Hellpoint Studios and Fun Lab Studios. They they act completely. They disregard any statement of asking questions as to the development of Unturned itself. They've always deferred to discussing with 505 Games themselves about anything Unturned related. And they've acted very odd and also disrespectful to some of the people who've asked questions besides myself about Unturned itself. And it's not fair to them. It's not fair to those consumers. It's not fair to, I guess, me, to act this way. And it's not fair, to, the Unturned player base to see, a version of it be so, bastardized, and kind of like forgotten to a degree.
Let me ask you
such companies.
So, who do you mean by Hellpoint? Do you mean Cradle Games? Was Cradle Games renamed?
They renamed after they released their MOBA, which was Hellpoint, and they've just basically became Hellpoint Studios. They could still be under the actual LLC name, Cradle Games, but they are Hellpoint Studios now. Which was at the time when I asked them about Unturned, which they seemed very against answering any of my questions again, about it, and always deferred me back to 505, even though they were the main people who were obviously had their hands on the game itself. And 505 was no help, obviously, with trying to figure out anything.
I'm just going to refer to them for now as Cradle Games. Cradle Games doesn't have their hands on the code anymore. They don't have their hands on the project anymore at all. They haven't had it for a while. What happened actually was Cradle Games took over the Unturned console community Discord, and Molt then wanted to transfer it to Molt because Cradle Games was absolutely done with it. The Cradle Games account was actually very grumpy and kind of almost mean. Whoever was behind the Cradle Games account, I'm sorry, you need a little, you need to chill a little. You're worse than me, and I can be bad. They had a conversation, a staff chat channel, featuring Cradle Games and Molt. So when Crusader got ownership of the console community Discord, he leaked that entire channel and the entire conversation. And from what you could gather from it, and that's now all deleted, so I don't know what was going on there. What you could gather from it was Cradle Games did not want to touch it anymore. Cradle Games, their main assignment was to do an update and then port to Switch and then leave it there. And it also seems like they were almost kind of forced in a way to work on this. They definitely didn't seem willing to work on the version of the game, the console edition.
Yeah, and I believe that. This is back when my account was from 2023. This is when I was actually doing the podcast every week. I was very interested in getting one of those guys to be on. So I haven't really touched up on a lot of that since, because all the parties involved acted so kind of rude and honestly did not care about the project. So I literally couldn't go anywhere else with this. But yeah, I believe you on that.
I'm gonna say this: if the clip of this is sent to 505 Games, I'm gonna say this: 505 Games, you're obligated to at least tell us something. Either admit that we have some problems here, and at least tell us that you don't plan on developing the game anymore. Just give us an ultimatum, give us a verdict, because it's worse saying nothing. Completely worse saying nothing. And SCG would have never done this to us, for instance. This is entirely a 505 Games problem, and I'm sorry that you need to respond. You need to do something, give us an update. Don't just leave an IP sitting there. I mean, I assume 505 Games was an interested party in buying it in the first place. I'm sure SCG didn't approach them right away. I bet 505 Games was people who approached. So why are you leaving it sit? You just bought something and then let it sit.
Yeah,
don't buy something and let it sit.
Which is interesting because I don't know the terms of the agreement that Smartest Games had signed with, obviously, the publisher 505 Games, and maybe by proxy also the companies involved with potentially the development of Unturned itself on console. But it seems but the way that they discussed it, the way they talked about it, even in the emails I had with the senior staff, it seemed very, what is the word? Legal. I'm not sure if they can say anything without violating some sort of agreement that they made with Smart Just Games. Maybe there was a term about developing of the game, right? And they were supposed to do adequate development for the game, and admitting that they could be in violation of that agreement or violation of some other caveat in their agreement as a publisher. Who knows? But it does seem like they've completely kind of like shut off, and for me it sounds like it's for legal reasons. But I also wonder how much money it would be to get back the IP from 505 Games, or if they're not willing to actually give it back.
My proposal is that 505 Games, if I'm not mistaken, they publish Terraria on consoles. And I think, did they publish it on Steam? Did they publish Terraria on Steam?
No, I believe they had access to the consoles. I remember seeing the physical copies in person with the 505 Games logo on them. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so 505 Games, I believe, published some of the original Terraria console versions. I think the console versions receive the same updates these days, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm not sure what the agreement there is. But you're telling me that 505 Games can't make an agreement with SCG, and with SCG finds prominent modders or just somebody who's actually competent and puts together their own team and just has an agreement where this development team overseen by them gets to work on the game while 505 Games still gets some money and still gets to publish it. Like, because the price tag, I mean, is already high enough. Like, so, and I'm sure they're not getting too many more sales. So why aren't they just, agreeing to make a deal and get more money out of it? I mean, it just financially doesn't make sense to me.
They might have just paid Nelson a lot of money. Like, legitimately, they might have just paid Nelson a lot of money, and there probably was, whoever was orchestrating the deal probably really believed in the IP to be, like, good. I think they might have, this is just speculation, they might have overestimated the value of Unturned on console and believed people would pay the $26 fee to buy it on console to recoup their payments. I bet you 100% they did not make back their money. And they kind of like, obviously they had to maintain the project for a little bit and kind of fix the issues that were on, the actual game to make it sellable. They kind of stopped after that point when it became just like, made no sense to keep burning money, in a project that wasn't making them, their money, which is interesting because honestly, I haven't looked at all at if there's any public information when it comes to the finances of 505 Games. Maybe there's a listing of Unturned somewhere that says something like along the lines of it being just a failed venture or a failed kind of agreement,
like a write-off.
No, because if it was written off, we'd probably see probably different actions. I don't think they can. Given the agreement that they made with Just Games, I don't think they legitimately can't. I think they just can't. They can stop burning money, is what they did. And that makes sense as to why Funland's kind of backed away. It makes sense as to why the Cradle Games development, team were very hesitant and very upset with working on the game. It seemed like they overestimated the return on investment of Unturned on console, then made a blunder. They probably gave Nelson a really decent deal. And now they just sit on the IP trying to make, I guess, like some rolling income on this big mistake that they made. Which I guess, if it was really good for Smart Just Games, then congratulations, you guys really hoodwinked 505 Games, but they screwed over a lot of consumers, in my opinion. And I don't know if 505 Games probably realized that, and that's why they've acted the way they have. The development teams involved, obviously, know that because I don't know, they've acted in such a way that it makes me think that they weren't compensated fairly. And I think Smart Just Games knows that, but they can't say anything due to their legal agreements, which makes sense. And it's a terrible set of circumstances that just led us consumers holding the bag, and I don't know how you would fix that. I don't know how you would fix any of that. it's a very sad tale, and in my opinion, it's one of the biggest stains on Unturned's kind of like history. And I was remember talking with Liam Does Games and his community, talking about like his community and how excited they were for the console edition, and for them to be so disappointed with how everything happened. It was upsetting to him, to such a degree, and by proxy, it was very upsetting to me to hear such a story like that. It's sad. It is really sad. I don't know if we'll ever get information about what happened behind the scenes with all those companies, unless they dissolve and we figure out more of their internals, which would be interesting, because, like, I don't know, let's say 10 years down the line, something insane happens with some of these companies, and you go look at their internals, and now you see all this, documentation about Unturned specifically. That'd be insane, to see those conversations and those talks about how much money was really being thrown around from all these, like, different studios, right? It'd be very, very interesting far in the future when we see kind of like the unraveling of some of these businesses and see what like exactly what was actually going on behind the scenes.
So if I do have some quotes in regards to the open sourcing that I want to get to, but the one thing I want to finish up with the console edition thing, because I think it's just a really important thing to note, is that the trailer, 5 Games had to approve that. Okay, so that just showed carelessness from the start. I'm sorry, bad first impression. Everything else you kind of saw coming because of that. Because it was perhaps one of the worst game trailers I've ever seen. Traditional gameplay footage would have been better, honestly. The gameplay isn't the best, but it's fine. It would have made do for a trailer. And then the teaser, the trailer for the console edition, was even worse. Well, for the Switch edition, the Nintendo Switch edition was even worse. Give me one moment. Speak on this, and I'm going to quote the exact words that were in the Nintendo Switch trailer.
I think, yeah, I agree. When the console edition trailer dropped, I think we were all worried. I was worried. It brought back certain content creators from the grave to talk about how very off-putting and very confusing these trailers were. And it made all of us really concerned, and our concerns were obviously shown to be correct when the game actually released. And it was, again, very upsetting. Very upsetting to the scene, very upsetting to all of us who wanted this to be good. Yeah. I know we're talking about the source code, but yeah, this is also like a big, thing we should also talk about it when it comes to just releasing of another Unturned, So it makes sense.
This is an on-screen quote from the Unturned Nintendo Switch launch trailer published officially by 505 Games on their YouTube channel. Zombies are a plague, but what about humans? Watch your step, trust no one. Zombies are a plague, but what about humans? What?
Yeah.
Do we need captioning like that? Zombies were the main part of the game. Zombies are a plague, but what about humans? And the trailer editing is terrible. Liam Does Game could have made a better trailer because this time it was actual gameplay footage. You had actual gameplay footage to work with, and it was still bad.
I really wonder. This is also something I'm wondering when it comes to if any of these companies were to dissolve and anything would ever go public. I would love to see who they actually got to work on some of these things. Who made the animations for the original console trailer? Who was that? Who made the trailers that worked for the Switch? Who were the people that actually did it? Because they had to have some knowledge of Unturned. They seemingly they did to a degree, more than the senior management, more than some of the developers. So I would love to see at least some of their testimony when it comes to their direction, and also who was involved. It would be interesting to hear from them, because I think they have a lot of insight when it comes to just being involved to a degree, being an outside people and just being involved and being hey, can you make this thing for us? and then them doing that. It'd be interesting to hear from them.
And yeah, so in terms of first impression for players, 505 Games allowed an unpolished and nonsensical trailer of the game to be made public. This original trailer had an incredible amount of simple errors and mistakes that made the overall team behind this trailer seem pretty incompetent. I don't even know if it was a team. It could have been one person, or one person could have animated that. The animator behind this trailer utilized models that weren't in the actual game, failed to texture some of the models properly, and made characters that just weren't reflective of the source material. For instance, zombies in wigs, weird poses, dual wielded weapons. What are we doing?
Missile
Helicopter
helicopters.
helicopter that isn't in the game. Um, just weird stuff, or welding a weapon while on a motorcycle. I mean, overall, it's heavily agreed upon within the current PC community that a gameplay trailer would have been arguably a better candidate. I mean, even Sir Addy said that. Um, and 505 Games showcasing themselves as inattentive towards the game's promotional material left a negative impression upon players that to this day has not been resolved.
Yeah. I also wonder if there was multiple animators on that project, because the scene changed several times. When it was all being done, it didn't seem concurrent. Like the way that it was animated didn't seem concurrent as to like what exactly was there. Like the scenery changed, certain aspects of like placement changed. Also like even simple animation things changed during the course of the whole trailer. And I wonder if there was multiple people working on different parts of the trailer to get it done quicker. And I wonder how quick, like, again, they made this trailer in. Could you imagine if this trailer was done in, like, 3 days? Between, like, 10 people? Like, that would sound insane. But, like, it could be a possibility. And I would love to talk to those 10 people about, like, exactly their testimony when it comes to, like, making it. It sounds very fun. And it sounds like a very, like, fun topic as to, like, why did we get this? Why was this the thing that 505 Games thought was a good idea? I don't know.
So I currently have an unreleased follow-up blog post to the open sourcing that I haven't put out yet. However, it has some quotes in it from people I know. In regards to open sourcing, because this is the open sourcing like thing, might as well ship back over there. You could rant about console edition for hours probably. One of the quotes here I have is releasing the unturned source files is not a bad idea overall. However, allowing spin-offs would split the game population even more, which would cause Unturned as a whole to lose a ton of players. And this was from Sawyer from Unbeaten Network. If you want to comment on that.
I mean, yeah. Another issue, though, I will say, is specifically, like, Unturned, like, people open Unturned to play Unturned, so you have to pull these people who are playing Unturned right now, obviously, to go play your fork of the game. And, I don't know, pulling people away from actual Unturned is not, in my opinion, smart, especially given that the amount of control that these forks probably will have over the gameplay, I guess, like, the way that you're supposed to, like, show off cosmetics, etc., right? So, yeah, I agree with him. I agree with him, yeah.
So another quote is, the decompiled version of the game is only so accurate. Open sourcing makes it easier to use it as a learning source, which I am all for. But I do agree that splitting the community is bad. We'll see how the ability to make derived works will impact the community, but I am excited to see the game be open sourced. And this was Gaming Today.
I mean, yeah, he's optimistic about it. I mean, I want to be optimistic about it, but, like, again, I can't be naive to the fact that, like, and also what you said about the modules not being, like, fully done by a lot of people, even though they're really powerful. Like, again, we have to, like, look at the actual facts of how people make stuff in this game, and already I guess what you also mentioned, a precedent that's already been set by a unofficial fork that was not under the licensing. We need to, as much as I want to be optimistic about this, I have to actually look at the facts and look at the reality of everything, and it's worrisome. I want to be more like Gaming Today, but it's just like, it's very hard to be that way when you know how this community is, when you've seen what this community has already done. But yeah, I mean, it's fine to be optimistic. It's fine to be looking, at the stuff, like, look at the gooder side of the stuff. And, yeah, this will be a learning moment for everybody, in my opinion. So, yeah.
Last quote, is open sourcing will let people create games by basically using Unturned as the base for it. But what's the point? That's not Unturned anymore. That's a different game using Unturned's code. If it was just a modded to hell and back Unturned, then yeah, fair enough. But how are you going to even launch this new game? New launcher, Steam release? That's basically just, here's this game I worked on for the past 15 years. Take all the code and bits and pieces that you want from it, and then go make and publish your own game. What does Unturned get from it? Certainly not more players. You could say that going open source would create incentive to get community developers to improve the game, add new features, fix bugs, and so on. But at the same time, the whole code is data mined already, and you can do a whole lot of things with modules, which people barely even know about. If people do create new features, fix bugs, or change things for the better, ultimately it would still be up to Nelson to actually implement any of those things in the original game. And this is from Zoli.
Yeah, I mean, Zolly's right. I agree. From like a perspective of any gain for Unturned, I only see really losses. The only gain that I see is, like, again, a historic moment for a game to publish a lot of its source code. Similar to, like, Team Fortress 2, right? This is another game that's done this, and it's another, like, obvious footnote as to exactly where gaming was at this time. That's one of the things, right? But I don't know. It's really difficult to say if people would even make the different versions of the game. And again, I feel like if people wanted to make improvements to Unturned, like, they easily could do it right now, without having to change the code. With just making, like, a different workshop, like, file itself, and just, like, making, like, an off branch of, I don't know, like, Washington, but, like, change a bunch of like gameplay features to make it feel more better. I mean, we have that already, and I mean, well, Strategist Games was bringing people on, like, Dog Food to improve and add more content to Unturned itself. I don't know how they're gonna really be different when it comes to the workshop stuff, when it comes to the different game stuff, because inherently they haven't really, I think about, like, more farming, obviously, and obviously now we have more farming stuff, but that more farming was out for many years. Are we gonna get, like, another, like, 4 to 6 years of some guy making a project and then wanting to, like, improve the main game itself, and then 6 years later, after he starts his project, he's like, all right, now you can be allowed to influence the actual game itself now? I don't know. It doesn't really sit right with me, and I agree with Zolly on, like, the idea of, like, the incentives are just seemingly not there, because Strategist Games hasn't really shown those incentives to be very clear, as well. And while we have references like Dog Food as a good source of, like, this is what you could eventually become for the game, it's not the standard, and that's a fairly new development for people, and it also doesn't seem very obtainable given how long Dog Food has been here and how long Dog Food has made content for the game. It's not, in my opinion, as if I was a modder, I would see that as very unobtainable if I was new in the scene to be on the level of that, even if you are talented, bless you, by the way. So yeah, I mean, I agree with Zolly too. All these people have good points, and
I was saying to bless you, not your yap.
Yeah, and all these people have good points, and these people are, very notable in our scene. They see the potential flaws. I don't know. I don't know what Friendly Games really thinks of everything. Again, we have to wait till July 7th to see their message when it comes to just the full release of the code, and then make our opinions off of that. Because maybe they'll answer some of these, maybe they'll say something that kind of puts to bed some of this stuff as to potentially why and the reason. But who knows? Well, we'll have to wait and see.
All right. We got someone with that. So I'm sure there's a lot to talk about with the open source thing. We've gone through my big ticket list, when it came to that. Let's see here. I definitely think there's potential for SCG to sunset it if they need to. But we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Seemingly haven't gotten to that point yet. For all we know, July 7th, Smash Games is you know what? Nah.
Well, not to leak too much, but California to release subtitle was Grand Finale. Even they don't know what that means.
I mean, from what I know, not to leak too much, the California team was not the people who made the thumbnail.
No, they were not. If you noticed, when the thumbnails first came out and pictures and stuff, it originally said California 2.0. It was changed to California 2. Because of the debate over whether it should be considered a new version or a sequel. I'm personally for a sequel. It's so different that it should be considered a sequel. I felt it was weird to do an Unturned 4.0 where you call it 4.0 because Nelson had to eventually say stop calling it 4.0. It's 2. It's the sequel. It's 2. So in California when they had to switch it from 2.0 to 2, that kind of made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
If you took a close look at the promotional material then.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of... And also they changed it so many times. I think they changed the thumbnail 3 times, right?
About that, yeah.
Yeah. And it did confuse people. I mean, it really did confuse people. I also think it's funny that, this is just a side note, I like how people thought that there was a map called Environmental, and they saw the Cali trailer, and they were like, I don't want this map, I want Environmental.
That is environmental.
No, I thought that was funny, and then SCG had to clarify that Environmental was Cali too. I love that, dude. That was so funny.
Well, I mean, it said environmental teaser. I mean, it's a teaser of the environment.
Yes,
You'd figure that people would understand that by now, but
that was still very funny. That was still very fun to see the community be upset at Cali 2's trailer and wanting Environmental to come out as Environmental was a map, and this probably just had to clarify that it was Cali 2.
Talking about California 2, a huge success in my opinion. Brought back a lot of people. Has had good retention on both third-party servers and the official curated servers for it. I think it highlights some of the good things, positive things about the old curated program. There's definitely value in a surprise release of a map, or really just an update release, because the new system or whatever calls for you to kind of upload it ahead of time. It kind of ruins the whole update vibe of it. So I do think the success of the map does highlight the fact that the old curated system had so much value that they might want to rework the new system in order to keep some of those benefits if they want to continue promoting maps.
I agree with you, but not completely. I think we look at gaming history. Some of the most successful games were released as betas on CDs. You think of Halo 2 beta, right? That was being given to some people, and people loved the demo. The demo beta, right? That was the thing for Halo 2, I think it was. And people loved that thing, but it wasn't the full game. And a lot of content was obviously cut to kind of keep the story kind of hidden, if I remember correctly. Again, this is what? I don't remember the years, but that was a long time ago. But people, we could have that sort of system in Unturned when it comes to like quote unquote a beta release of a map, right? And people are I like this map, and either a content creator, basically a workshop developer, I should say, is keeping some of their content hidden, in preparation to release more if they were be contacted by Spartacus Games. That's probably a smart way to do it, and that would be a better way to frame the current curated system, as to turn your maps into beta testing for certain aspects of your map that you're not sure how it would work, and then restrict content until either a collaboration or when you have more content to show off, obviously. I think that's what people will probably do, and then just either update their map completely and overhaul it completely on a release like that, or have this content ready on deck until conversation with Spartacus Games is made. They show off this content that's going to be added, and then they go on from there. I think that will probably be how the system will work. That's probably how it should somewhat work, to at least get like some of the minor problems out of the way and fixed of a map project. We obviously know of like problems when it comes to like people building under the map, or like breaking like a certain aspect of like an NPC or something. Like that stuff should be caught like very soon before like an actual release of a project, to not leave a sour taste in, you know, people's mouths when it comes to it coming out on the main game. I think Cali 2 had a lot of playtesting. Also did have a lot of issues on release, like any other curated map. But it wasn't as bad to be so detrimental to the player base. It was good. And I think if people kind of treat their new projects on a new curated system as just beta testing their projects until a collaboration, which may or may not happen. I don't know how else is going to do it. That might be good. And a lot of people that talk to me when it comes to Cali, like just like random folks, they all say to me that they all saw the promotional material for Cali 2 and were excited, and then joined onto Unturned to see what Cali 2 was about. I saw people that I haven't seen in years come back to the game and be like, hey, what's this about? I knew people from like 2017, 2018, 2020, 2019, people I thought I would never see again come back because of the promotional material of Cali 2 and how good it looked. And that's important. And that's important for the longevity of Unturned. And no matter how many certain content creators claim that the workshop projects are not good and do not add any value to Unturned, they clearly do. And that shouldn't be taken away from Unturned for the longevity of the game itself. Spartacus Games just needs to be due diligent enough to ensure that quality material is still being added to its game in a similar manner. And obviously, give the curated developers their cut for the work that they have made if they partner with them. I think that should be always ensured to them, just because I think a lot of the work that they make is very, very wonderful. So, that's my opinion on that. I'm not sure how you feel about that, J-Dance. All right. All right.
All right. So, I think one of the things from California too, we had those quote unquote official servers. Both pros and cons. I know you have your problems with them. You are enemy number one currently.
Oh yeah. Are we discuss the NA official server?
I don't want to just go into it too much because like I don't like want to start like a whole God knows what. Yeah. But if it wasn't for like moderation issues, I think conceptually these official curated servers do well because they showcase how the map is supposedly meant to be played, and like curated map developers have input on it. I feel like it would have been better almost if SCG actually had almost like a system of just like in my opinion, if the same people who are moderate, and this is controversial to people because people are always like still hate the official Discord, even though it's like they were like banned like fucking like six years ago or something, whatever. Sweared there, all good. I do think they would have had less moderation issues had a veteran moderation team like the one on Unturned Official had they been the ones to moderate it. But whatever. I think it's a good proof of concept in terms of what like SCG official servers could look like. I mean, it's not an official server by SCG, but it's conceptually kind of starting to lean like towards the idea of like officiality in terms of servers. I'm also trying to figure out whether they were absolutely necessary or not, or whether if these servers were gone, people would just play on like the infected or whatever.
I think my personal take on the official servers is like a concept. Again, I think your moderation tools that you have your hands on are really good. They've made the experience so very much more playable. In all my years of Unturned, there's always been issues of cheating, rampant abuse, and all this. And you kind of made the server kind of have this level of professionalism, which should be upheld for official servers, like official, unofficial servers, right? And that's important for not only for the server, like, player base, but also the longevity of Unturned. I look at Rust a lot as, like, an example of official servers because they don't play around with certain stuff, like, at all. You will be permanently banned if you mess up on some of these servers for just doing things that, like, Unturned has, like, always had this issue for. And I think, personally, I think official servers can be done. I know Smite Games doesn't want to shell out money, and there's a actual good thing that Nelson could be doing right now to kind of make official servers become real. But again, there's a lot of paperwork to do, and yeah, I mean, I would love to see like vanilla be like kind of propped up by SCG servers to kind of like again get a modicum of like how the game plays right now and what we can improve on to make it better for players to enjoy the actual base game, which is important. And yeah, it's a proof of concept. I personally like it. I hope maybe it will convince them, but again, at the same time, we've had multiple quote-unquote official servers for these workshop releases, and it hasn't really changed their mind on stuff that much. So, I don't know, maybe this time will be different, given the moderation implementations to the official servers, but who knows? I don't know. Well, we'll have to wait and see on that front, but Smart Games has always said, like, it's an idea, but it's not something that they're actively seeking out to do.
Yep. One of the interesting topics that we wanted to go over, and I don't want to linger on it too much, but is the Robocast video.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure if you want to. Well, I guess I'd say my thing first, and I think you have a more hands-on approach to this. I'm going to discuss this as specifically a viewer, a person who plays Unturned, and my perspective on the Robocast video that was released on his YouTube channel. As an Unturned player, I think that video, it's trying to mix history with like kind of a point, right? It's trying to put you in this kind of like feeling of like, this is what Unturned was, this is Unturned how it is, and this is Unturned now. But it's very confusing. The video is very scattered, right? The question that the video asks is Unturned dead? Or like, it should be dead. But then pivots to being like, oh, it's filled with bots. And actually this game is potentially dead, but not dead. It's very up in the air. It doesn't answer its own original question. I think the history portion of the Robocast video was very disregarding of people like Jacksepticeye, iBallistic Squid, PewDiePie, the people who were very important, that without those three massive content creators, even Dan TDM to a degree, without them, Paul Soares Jr. would have never showed up. Nihilix wouldn't have been introduced. I think Nihilix was introduced by Jack. Like, wouldn't have shown up. These were very influential people that brought back, even some of the MC YouTubers that went to Unturned at the start of Unturned's 3.0. Like, wouldn't have shown up if it wasn't for these people who, brought Unturned to the forefront. I think that was kind of silly because it's all from the perspective of Robocast. It's Robocast's perspective of history. That's why he mentions, what was it? I don't remember, bootleg RP like several times in the video, and also claims that Nihilix RP is like keeping Unturned like multiplayer afloat. Like, what are we talking about? Like, are we insane? And I will also say, as a player and a viewer, I found it very disrespectful that he wasn't willing to talk about any of the curated maps that came out and give them their praise. He kind of briefly mentions them, but doesn't give them any praise whatsoever. Gives more praise to Bootleg RP than all the curated maps that changed Unturned so much and benefited this game so much. To me, as a viewer, it seemed very, very, very biased as well. It seemed like Robocast came into the video with a very specific viewpoint. A very specific viewpoint being that Smudgers Games is somehow doing something malicious to prop up their game for some sort of monetary value. And that was kind of like the whole kind of vibe of the video until he kind of starts discussing the conversation he had with Smudgers Games himself. And that's kind of like my takeaway from that.
So you mentioned Bootleg. He was actually talking about Life RP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, Bootleg is gone. So on my end, so he had a big highlight on like modding and how it like, kept the game alive, right? But I don't think he understands modding because he showed a chart of Rocket Mod and Open Mod like prevalence on servers, and like was talking about modding in like that sense, right? Open Mod and Rocket Mod are completely unnecessary in terms of modding anything, and don't do much. You can have a vanilla server that runs Rocket Mod, and they do nothing with the permission system on Rocket Mod, because Rocket Mod is on most server hosts, it's just installed standard. So to say, well, this so-and-so percent of servers is modded based off of the Rocket Mod Overmod chart is completely inaccurate, because that's not saying whether these servers are modded or not. That's just saying whether they happen to have a bare bones plugin framework installed. And most of the time, those bare bones plugin frameworks have little to no impact on the server itself unless you have a very in-depth plugin installed.
Yeah, and also, I think you might laugh at this. I also find it kind of weird that on the list of, plugin frameworks, the legally distinct missile was not there. How curious, huh? How curious.
Legally distinct missile is Rocket Mod. So
yeah, I know. It's just Smudgers Games renaming it.
In terms of plugin advertisement, I mean, all those servers that are running Rocket Mod are running LDM. Same deal.
Yeah,
they're all the same. I wouldn't label it as LDM. It's perfectly fine to refer to as Rocket Mod. I would refer to it as Rocket Mod. There's no reason to label it as LDM.
No. If he was genuine, he would put legally distinct missile.
Well, to be fair, the chart was from Restore Monarchy. That isn't on him.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I'm just making a joke about it.
In terms of player counts, using battle metrics over Restore Monarchy set the player count off by a decent bit. He said that the ranges that he said later in the video that the player count was still within the ranges that he said, but just because you said something later in a video doesn't mean that in response to a lot of this, who's banking on the fact that like somebody is going to like absorb all of the information in the video and make their own like opinion. No, they're gonna work with your opinion and your view on it, right? They're not going to construct their own world about like how the game is, especially from an outside perspective. So I found that really annoying. Is just like, so you were off with the player counts, like in a photo, right? And you display this visually on screen. And when you display something visually on screen, you better hope it's accurate and factual, because that's what people absorb, right? When you're speaking on a range, people aren't going to think about the fact, oh, wait, the player counts they showed was on the lower end of the range. They're not thinking about that. So the fact that he used battle-metrics over Restore Monarchy and that for that particular chart made no sense to me. I still have my problems with it. I'm gonna say fair enough about like him like saying that the range that he proposed still incorporates like the multiplayer counts for Restore Monarchy, but again, you're completely disregarding servers running SDR Steam Datagram relays And this then uncovered a situation with SCG where SCG was seemingly unaware of the fact that SDR servers are not visible on battle metrics. Their own support post said that battle metrics was not even that far off from their own data collection. So does that mean SCG's data collection is just inaccurate? So this opened a whole can of worms in which, like, one, don't use the inaccurate metrics when it comes to the player counts, and two, we have a serious problem with SCG because they don't have the right metrics apparently.
Yeah, which is concerning to a degree. Like, that's kind of insane. And I want to get back to like the player count for like a moment, like but a different aspect of it. The whole concept of the video was like, Unturned should be dead, right? But then he, in his numbers, he notes like thousands of people are genuine people are playing the game still. Wouldn't that inherently mean and answer the question that Unturned isn't dead, even on the lowest metric? I think what was the lowest number that he gave for how many people were real playing the game? Do you remember?
If it was based off of battle metrics, you're asking?
Whatever number. I don't remember the number he said. Was it like 8,000? I could be wrong.
It was somewhere around there, I believe.
It might have been 7,000. But
I feel like that would have been a little bit on the high. Might be a little bit higher than that because he wasn't using Restore Marquee that much. But yeah, it sounds about right.
even if like, could you say like, I don't think in any like world a game with 7,000 or 8,000 real players is by far like dead, right? We know what dead games are, and we've obviously like we grew up with games as kids. And nobody plays those games anymore for obvious reasons. Like, they're just not seen as, like, they're just not played anymore because they're just old. And, they're good memories, but not many people play them anymore. And it's like, those are games that, like, are dead. There's communities of games. There's games that haven't had, like, content on them for years, and you can only find very little information on them nowadays. One of those games is one of my childhood games, is like Lego Battles. And there's only this small little community of people who play the game still. In a very, maybe illegal way, but they do play the game still. And it's like, maybe like, I don't know, like 20 of them, like, that I found that like still like make like occasional videos. And I think that's very telling of a game that's, has like not a lot of people around, but, still kind of alive to a degree. But again, I could say that the Lego Battles game is dead. Not many people play that game, and there's only a small group of people who still remember the game and have fond memories of the game and still play the game today. Unturned by far outclasses that game by eons when it comes to its player count, its workshop mods, and etc. Right? And I think in my opinion, it was disingenuous for Robocast to really say and kind of brush it off by his own metrics the thousands of people who are still playing this game and still enjoying this game today. And that's what made me so, like, it miffed me so much, because I always feel like whenever I kind of, like, defer to this word, nowadays when it comes to people who kind of are in, like, kind of Robocast's position. These people haven't played the game in years and haven't been involved with the community for years, but they come out of the blue to critique our game and critique us specifically because for some reason we're too weird for them. We're an anomaly for them. I like to call them tourist. I stole this name from a different, online space where they were talking about how people come in to criticize them and criticize the way that they enjoy their games as tourist. And I think it was stolen from somewhere else. But these people have essentially become tourist when it comes to our community. And they are outsiders that come back and put us under a magnifying glass and try to find any little bit of thing to make a big scene about. But when they actually find actual evidence that goes against their preconceived beliefs, they kind of, in a way, don't go back on what they believe on. Even in Robocast's video, he's like, I don't know, I'll leave it up to you. Even after he had a discussion with Smiley Just Games, after he clarified how much money was being gained by Smiley Just Games from, like, what he believed was the place that Smiley Just Games was trying to make money off of, And even his original question, he couldn't say, like, okay, there's still a good bit of people playing this game. It's by far not dead. And, kind of retract the original statement that he kind of already made. It never really happens that way. He might do it in a roundabout way, but he never does it directly. And it's always left to the viewer as to, make your conclusion, even though the evidence points to, obviously, their original statement not being correct. And it just makes me so upset, because these people have a lot of influence on how people view us as a scene. And Robocast would never show up on something like this, like a podcast like this, because that's just not his prerogative. Because again, he's not in it to actually make an impact specifically on our scene. He's trying to put us under a magnifying glass to find a problem, and he wasn't able to. And it's very sad, just to see these people who enjoyed the game at one point kind of have that view of the game. And I don't know. It just makes me more bitter as time goes on.
I'm not going to speak on motive or intention, because I don't know what I think about that. But there's definitely a research. He could have contacted more people about researching this topic. There was a complete failure to mention how the bots fell off a lot in June to July of 2024. And failed to mention that the drop was made 30,000 people, right, within a short period of time.
Yeah, it was insane.
Maybe a few weeks.
Yeah.
And guess what this aligned with? Valve's crackdown on Team Fortress 2 bots. It's not a coincidence. So obviously lines up with that. There's plenty of articles that came out June 29th, July 1st, etc. In which they mentioned the Valve's crackdown on bots in 2024. So where's the mention of that? You need to speak on the fact that even Valve stepped in and cracked down on this, and ever since Valve stepped in, the accounts seem more realistic. And you can only assume that Valve is now enforcing it, so the botting problem is not as prominent as it was.
Yeah, I think also as well, it was important to point out that how these botters potentially could make money. It's very simple. I figured it out through one guy. I found out that specifically all the money that these guys do for the botting for Unturned, the monetary value, is not even done on the Steam platform. It's all done third party. So even if Smash Game had incentive to allow these bots to even exist, they weren't even making money off of them, because they were working off of third party websites to basically sell the scrap material to individuals. Which also, Robocast didn't even mention scrap in this video as the way that people were making money off of the botting. He didn't mention that at all. And I think it was also kind of disingenuous to kind of say that Smarter Games had incentive to kind of had these bots on the platform, and never clarify how the bots even made the money, how these people even made money, or who was even behind it. It was always the idea of
motive. What was the motive for the botting?
Exactly. Where was the motive? And it was never answered. It could have been easily answered if he asked even anybody in the trading community. He could have easily got that answer, but it seemingly he didn't do that, and that was also weird. I don't know. I agree with you, Jadance, that there was a lot of things I think he could have done to get more information. And that's why it even goes back to my main point of him being an outsider. It would have been very simple to have conversations with certain community members about these things to get a better, clear photo of what was going on. But he chose not to. For whatever reason, I don't know. I could speculate, and I have speculated on it in this podcast. But I'll never know. I'm not Robocast. So, yeah.
So technically, so this is technically my second episode on here, right?
Technically, yes.
Right. So, considering this is technically my episode again, I don't know. It's the emergency open source episode at the same time with consultation. Any questions regarding my stuff?
Jadance, what do you
The
think?
silence doesn't.
Hold up, hold up, hold up. I was gonna give you something. I was trying to make it good. I was trying to make it good. Jadance, do you believe that the future of Unturned is brighter or dimmer?
Brighter or dimmer? Oh, good question. Dimmer.
Do you believe, Jadance?
My my theory banks on more involvement by SGG, not less.
I see. Do you think that you will be approached by individuals to use your skills in a meaningful way in a bigger project, like a big fork for Unturned in the future?
This is definitely possible. I've been personally pushing for getting a module that's would be worked on by multiple server owners. To like get a more combined forks, something that's like a group thing, so there's no exploits and stuff. Something that has a bunch of features that everyone can work with. Essentially, is like get a big community branch together or module branch. I've been wanting to do that for a long time. I think if I'm not the one organizing it, I'd probably be the one approached for the most part. But again, people don't have motive for it. RBMK Blaze, I tried to convince him, and he was like, "The game's dead. There's no point in it. Nobody's gonna want to have to download a launcher in order to install a module." And my opinion is, if you don't do it, then somebody else is gonna do it, and it's gonna be worse. I'd rather have more trustworthy individuals that aren't going to abuse stuff make these and get it done before this open sourcing thing becomes so prevalent. Um, and for the most part, yeah, I believe I'll have some future involvement in that for sure.
Yeah, and also I want to build off of that too. Like, it's important for people to see the good that this can do. It's important for people to see the good this can do. I don't want people to get like a very, very, very paranoid about anything and being like, no, 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 no. Do not work with any of the other forks of Unturned due to, malicious actors. Like, that is very dangerous and a very scary precedent because it could turn off the entirety of what Smash Games was trying to do and make this entire venture be a failure. And that is something, again, there needs to be more, trustworthy, level-headed individuals who are smart enough to actually get the things done and make it safe for people to consume. And also be able to think for themselves, the next generation of developers, to think, hey, I want to do that. That looks like fun. I have a good idea that I want to do. That's important. And Smart Games, I know, wants that. And I think it is important for the current developers to be at least a little more open, to at least be like, okay, let's just do something, even if it's small, that might, influence the next people that come after them. Because I've seen that over my years of being here, is how the works of, G2M, in Mookie, in Rain, how their projects influenced everything else. How important they were to the entire scene. I think about even Dog Food and people looking at Dog Food's work and being like, this guy did a lot of good work, and I would love to improve this game in this way. And then other people making their own versions of Unturned. And, in the workshop specifically, making edits to maps and making additions to, with mods and stuff. That's important.
I'll be blunt. Those people that you just said and those projects that you just said that were influential, I haven't seen that affect any of the newer projects at all.
No, because the next generation did. Literally, the next generation did. After that, they influenced the next generation. And then it's a cycle. I'm just mentioning them because, in my opinion, they're titans of, Unturned. And without them, I think there'd be a lot of differences today if they weren't around when they were. But yeah, you're right. Even though you don't know their influences now, they're not very clear now because of how they influenced their generation of modders, and then those modders influenced those next generation of modders, and then etc. Right? It's very important, and I think everybody can agree how important that is. We almost got to 2 hours. We made a joke specifically about recording for Eastern Standard Time around 6 and 7 due to the episode's number and given the meme. But we've gone
You
way
could
over
split them.
that. We've gone way over that.
You could split them. You could
I'm
split
not
them.
splitting them.
6, 7, and then 6, 7. Wait, 6, 7.5, and then wait. No, how would you do that?
I don't know.
Wait, 66.5 and 6, 7.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, one last thing I really wanted to talk about was in terms of SG, like trying to bank on the fact that like reasonable people will get together. I've had a lot of difficulties with that. The only main real case scenario for that currently is UCS. That's it. That's literally it. And I have a hard enough time like managing that. I mean, because what we have maybe about 12 networks now. And it's hard to convince them to get anything done. I purposely made it so it requires a 2/3 vote in there to do anything. Turns out to be thorn in my side, but I'd rather keep it rather than risk abuse. So, in terms of getting people to do something, so like if I wanted to create like a standardized module or branch, right, for servers like that just expands like the modding scene so you can make more custom game modes and stuff, I'd probably try and do it for UCS, like because these are the larger networks whose opinion matters and in something like that. So I'd probably like try and convince people through that in terms of getting a module done. But surprisingly, UCS, despite my troubles with it, was fairly successful. I think we're at 7,000 global cheating bans now.
Yeah, I saw the numbers. It's
And now
crazy.
we have the official California server on it now. And the main benefit is that you get banned on the official California 2 server. You can't just move to a different California 2 server that's popular and cheat there because they're also in the global ban system. So you're going to have to go for the effort of changing your Steam account, changing out your hardware ID, changing out your IP, and changing out anything else. I probably shouldn't have listed that because now people are going to get ideas, but most people on average forget to change like one of those and they get banned again anyways. Cheaters are very lazy, as it turns out, so the system is actually fairly effective despite people's criticisms. And people were like, well, a global ban system, that would be ineffective, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, no anti-cheat system and no ban system is completely effective. BattleEye isn't 100% effective. I'd argue that BattleEye is only like 50% effective. I mean, I don't see cheaters getting banned on California 2 official servers first by BattleEye. No, we're the ones who are banning them at first. So BattleEye is kind of just lazy when it comes to bans. So the fact people criticizing, like saying that UCS is a dumb idea, it'll be ineffective, and that it'll like harm the players is ridiculous. We had allegations about like saying, well, they store your IP and your hardware ID. And I'm like, any server that bans you has your IP and hardware ID. Those aren't technically personal identifiers. Neither is your Steam ID. Steam/Valve has clarified that your Steam account is not your personal identifier. So like saying that, oh, they're gonna have your IP and use it for something. Guy, we have your IP in a load of thousands of other like hashed, like encrypted IPs. So we can't do anything with it to begin with. And there's not much you can do with it on the internet to begin with. For instance, if you joined the California 2 official server right now, right? I could go into the logs and get your IP. It's not that hard.
I mean, yeah.
Like, there is this overreaction regarding like ban enforcement via IP, which makes no sense. There's a huge array of misinformation about anti-cheat systems and ban systems, and SCG has to deal with this all the time. We had to deal with this with the source code when people were saying, wouldn't that make cheating more prevalent? No, because the cheaters already had the decompiled code. If they needed to see the game code, they could have already done it. None of the code was like, what's the name for it? None of the code, you can run it for something to make the code like harder to read, etc., but still compile. And SCG didn't do that. So cheating isn't going to be more prevalent just because the game was open sourced via the Ufree SDK. And so I talk about this because I think UCS is going to play a big role in how I model future things and how we will need to come together and stuff regarding making a new module or sharing bands, etc.
I will say this as a player because ultimately I play Unturned. Like I think J-Dance knows this very well. But I play the game and I've played the game for many years, and I can wholeheartedly say that the UCS has been such a blessing to deal with such a problem with Unturned. It is a There's a massive cheating on Unturned, and it's been a problem for so many years. I had to deal with it for so many years, and to see somebody actually make something to stop these guys from continuing to just easily cheat on Unturned is a godsend, because it made this game so much more funner to play, and it stopped people from obviously rage cheating you the moment that you win a scenario. So yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very thankful as a player for what you've brought to the table when it comes to just servers in general. I bet you 100% the players, while they will not say it because they probably don't even notice it, also thank you as well for the work that you've done and your team has done for bringing this to the forefront, because it's made Unturned more playable and more enjoyable. I know some of the people that have criticized you as well for this, for the work you've done on that, but I personally, as a player, as a person that plays this game, it's necessary. I'd rather have more tools and moderation on servers to deal with cheaters than less. And unless somebody has a better idea to curtail these cheaters, I don't want to hear it, because ultimately, who's being affected is the player base. And if you do nothing to make the player base, less affected, then you're not helping the scenario. And that's my
And
2 cents on it.
so talking about the future of that and talking about what we're doing currently is the other misconception was that we were quote unquote sharing IPs between the servers, the member servers. We in fact don't. We have one backend server, and all the IP comparisons are done on the backend server. So your IP is never sent to any of the member servers, like member networks at all. So the IPs are only shared with one like backend server, and that's it. So even if you're so concerned about your IP, which you shouldn't be because everyone has it, I guarantee you someone has it. Um, it is still fairly safe in terms of that, and we're working on better hashing and encryption measures for that, just to be sure. We doubt that'll be a huge problem, and we're also looking at like right to erasure, so your individual pieces of data aren't all associated with each other. Because right now, your Steam ID, IP, and hardware ID are all associated with each other in one database row. Um, and this is fine as default behavior because server owners want to see like what account is cheating on their server. But for instance, you could request for that information to be divvied up, so we couldn't link like an IP or hardware ID back to a particular Steam ID. Um, and this is sort of a voluntary thing for us to implement because I believe under GDPR, it's somewhat necessary for us to kind of associate that data still in order to maintain the system. But I digress. Talking about the future though, and I can't link too much about innovations and how we're doing it. Well, via our system, um, we plan like we do have one instance, and again I'm not going to reveal how it works, how we do anything, but actually hang on, um yeah, no, uh you want to end this?
What do you mean?
We can end this now finally.
End the podcast? Well,
Yeah.
there's one last thing I guess I want to talk about. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I want to be hopeful, and I am hopeful for everything that's going to come out soon, how Snyder's Games is going to handle the release of the source code. I obviously have my worries. The community has its worries. And ultimately, we all want to see the success of Unturned. And if we become more fragmented and more disunited because of this, you're going to see centralization and into a handful of people. And I hope Smash Games understands that. I hope you know that not everybody has your best interest in mind. And not everybody's going to be playing by the rules, by the laws. And it could get messy. And to all the players who are listening to this, take precaution. Be careful. Don't get caught up in nonsense that could have been avoidable. And, ultimately, keep enjoying Unturned. And that's why we're all here. Because we love and play Unturned. And I hope to be playing Unturned for the far future. If I'm allowed to. And if the game's still ticking. But yeah, that's my final take on everything. And I hope everybody got some value out of this episode. I know this is kind of like, this is more of an emergency episode. I wasn't planning to make another episode so soon. Thank you, Jans, for coming on and talking about this stuff. Again, you're like one of the only people I could probably ask about this stuff and give me like accurate and more knowledgeable information. Because I don't know the full story. I don't even know like the majority of the stuff, to be honest with you. So thank you for coming along and talking on here.
Yep.
Well, on that note, this concludes this episode of the Unturned podcast. I've been your host, Gregory Charles, and till next time, when another emergency episode might come along, or when I bring back the show forever. Who knows? Alright. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye.